gametes. That's what makes me male.
I struggled for a very long time to wrap my head around trans issues. When I was struggling, I sounded a lot like Mr. Walsh. I would have said that biologically, humans have two sexes, and that any deviation from that is a mutation in the technical sense. As a society, why should we cater to differences that amount to nothing more than copying errors, let alone encourage people to embrace those copying errors as identities? I believed this was a scientifically grounded worldview. Then I did something Mr. Walsh has never done. I studied biology. I have a bachelor's of science in bio, and I taught it for many years. And in studying real biology, my concept of the world changed dramatically. I learned that the way we see and interpret science is always through our inherited cultural lens, with all of its prejudices, biases, and blind spots. Literally every living thing is the result of a series of what we would call mutations. And frankly, the word mutations is misleading because it suggests that the strategically implemented differences between individuals are somehow mistakes. They're not. Those differences are the evolutionary strategy of this planet to promote life, health, and wellness. Our bodies are capable of almost perfect accuracy, fidelity, when copying genetic code. Take Hox genes, for example. These are the genes that dictate where your spine, arms, and legs go. Mutations in Hox genes basically never occur. Our bodies get it right every time. Contrast that with mutations in our ability to smell different things. You are statistically guaranteed to have a different sense of smell than even your closest siblings because we do an intentionally messy job of copying scent genes to create diversity. So it's not a mistake that we have different senses of smell. It's how we evolve to function best as a community. The same thing is true for virtually every aspect of both sex and gender. Our genetic transcription and translation around sex and gender is much more similar to our messy, diverse scent genes than our rigid, fixed Hox genes. Sex and gender-wise, as a species, we're a hot mess. This means that as communities, remember, we're an evolutionarily communal species, so evolution is always selecting for collective strength, not individual. We benefited, or at least didn't suffer, from the presence of wide diversities of sex and gender. This is directly in line with the truth and wisdom that indigenous people all over the world have been saying for millennia, which is that people with different sex and gender identities bring wisdom to the communities they're a part of. In addition to the increase of awareness of trans people, there also seems to be an increase in the rate of transgenderism in the human population. Some research links this to chemical pollutants, hence Alex Jones' wild rants about making the friggin' frogs gay. A limited perspective on biology would say that this is evidence that it's just a mutation. An informed or holistic perspective would say that increasing sex and gender diversity is an emergent property of our world today. One way to interpret this is that a cis-normative worldview has created circumstances which need trans wisdom in order to heal. As a man in this culture, I can personally vouch for how trans people's perspectives have benefited me. Hearing trans men talk about how they struggled to access their emotions when they began taking testosterone was wildly humanizing and validating for me. Like, it's not just my social programming and mental health that make it hard to cry? Damn. That's just one overt example of the nuance and insight that trans perspectives offer. Mr. Walsh, I hope that someday you learn the very simple differences between biological sex, gender, and orientation. We all have all three, and they're all different. None are as simple as you seem to think, and your misleading, unscientific oversimplifications are both blinding you and actively harming people in your community.